Dr. Boyce Watkins, and I'm here doing this on behalf of Boss Sports, the Boss Sports Network. It's at brothersonsports.com, and it's a website where black men control the conversation. That means that black men get a chance to talk in a way that is honest and potentially politically incorrect if necessary. And we're not being told sort of what to think by these other constituencies like feminist groups or anybody else that tries to control black men. And I feel like that conversation is very important, and that the reason I agreed to partner with some brothers on the creation of this concept is because we notice that most black men are afraid to advocate for other black men. You've got black men in academia who are more likely to align themselves with feminists than they are to align themselves with black men. You've got black men in corporate America who are afraid of their own shadow. You got black men who are out here suffering and struggling. Unlike any other group of people in America, black men have the highest unemployment rate. We have the highest incarceration rate. We have the highest homicide rate. But yet no one advocates for us because everybody's so busy trying to be a feminist, trying to fight for gay rights, trying to fight for immigration, trying to fight for all this other stuff. Then they forget about the brothers that are rotting away in prison. Now, with that said, I want to go into and have a politically incorrect discussion about Adrian Peterson of the Minnesota Vikings. He was recently suspended for spanking his son with a switch, and a lot of people thought that that was inappropriate. And I saw some of the pictures, and I was concerned about the pictures as well, especially if the wounds did not heal. I think that he might have gone overboard. He might not have realized his own strength. There are a lot of young, I guess you would say, young athletes, or it might apply also to young soldiers or just men who have that kind of strength and power, who don't really realize what they're doing to their children when they spank them. And I think it's important to kind of understand that sometimes you may be hurting the child more than you think. And also, I think it's important to understand that physical discipline does not, it should not come without some serious understanding to the child that A, I'm doing this A because I love you, and then B, let me explain why this is happening so that you can get a bigger lesson from this. Because I've seen a lot of parents who say, I'll beat my kid's ass in a minute. Like, they brag about it. Like, oh yeah, well, they don't mess with me, I'll break your neck, I'll choke you, I'll put you in the hospital. That's nothing to brag about. You don't brag about hurting your child. You don't brag about killing your child. You don't joke about how you're going to end up in the emergency room if you talk back to your mama. No, you don't have to do all that. Now, here's the thing, though. I'm not against physical discipline. I think sometimes spanking a kid is the only way to get that kid's attention. That's why you got these little badass kids that go into the grocery store throwing stuff all through the aisles and screaming, cussing their mamas out. No. And here's the other thing, and the reality is, in America, black kids really can't get away with that, because if they do that in the house and they try to do that in society, guess what? Your son will be shot. Your son will be murdered by police. Your son will be beaten and brutalized by cops. Your son will be dead. Your son will be in prison so long that he'll never get out if you don't discipline him while he's in the house. My grandfather used to say to my mother, and I'll say this, I was a kid who got whoopings, I got spankings, I got some beatings. The beatings were not necessary. Sometimes in a fit of anger, my parents, if they did spank me and it was too hard, there were probably better ways to handle that. And I'm going to put that on them. But at the same time, what I'll say is this. My grandfather used to say to my mother, he said, you better whoop him now when he messes up. Because if you don't, then that police officer gets a hold of him 10 years from now, the police officer is going to put a whooping on him like you would not believe, and there won't be a damn thing you could do about it. And so my mother erred on the side of caution and conservatism. I had a conservative family, at least on my mother and grandmother's side. You've heard me talk a lot about my grandmother on my mother's side and just the huge influence she was on me. She was my first finance professor. She did so many things for me to make me the man I am today, whatever that is. But at the same time, they had kind of an old school approach. Sometimes it was spank first, ask questions later, and that was not always necessary. But I'm glad they erred on the side of caution as opposed to allowing me to go to the other extreme, like some of my friends, where their mothers would let them get away with, the little kid, he steals something, the parents overlook it. He talks back to their mama, the parents overlook it. He hurts another person, the parents overlook it. They're always making excuses for their kids because my baby can do no wrong. Well, guess what? A lot of those guys I knew are in prison right now. A lot of those guys I knew are dead right now. Some of them are on drugs right now. And so if you ask me what's better, to discipline your child and make sure they turn out okay, or to let your child run wild and take the chance that they're going to end up screwing up, I would take the discipline any day of the week. But at the same time, that does not mean that physical discipline is the only way to raise a child. I do think, though, that there are some people who engage in physical discipline, and they're not wrong. They're not abusive. They're not always bad people and trying to hurt the child. Sometimes they do, but we got to know the difference between a spanking and a beating. And so, the other, I guess, final point I'll make on this is we got to quit letting these liberals tell us what to do. We got to stop letting conservatives tell us what to do. Black people, we have our own way of doing things, and there are some situations, many situations, where our cultural wisdom exceeds the cultural wisdom around us, the cultural stupidity around us. There's a lot of things going on in the broader space, and we get so caught up in being so aligned with the Democrats and with the liberals that we end up doing whatever the hell they tell us to do. If they think this thing is cool, then suddenly we got to think it's cool. If they tell us to stop doing this, we got to stop doing this. No, nobody controls your destiny but you. Nobody has a right to tell you what to do or how to live or how to raise your kids but you. Just raise your kids with intelligence. That means if you have to spank the child, maybe that can be the nuclear option. Maybe that's the last resort. Definitely talk to your child. One thing black people don't do enough of, I don't want to overgeneralize here, but you know what I'm talking about, is we don't respect the opinions of children. We don't listen to our kids. We don't talk to them. You'll spank a child and not tell the child why they got spanked. You got to let your child know you love them. And then on top of letting them know you love them, you got to talk to them about, like, okay, this is why this is not acceptable. You smoking weed at the age of 10 is going to open the door for you to be hooked on drugs at the age of 15. Or you stealing right now can open the door for you to end up like Uncle So-and-so. Okay, so you have to explain it. And what you'll find too is that if you explain the child and if you respect the child's going to respect you back. They're going to listen to you. And then you get to the point where because you've got the threat of spanking in the background, you won't have to spank at all. And that's what they call the nuclear deterrent in foreign policy. Because you got nuclear weapons, you don't have to use them because people know that you've got something that can end the battle pretty quick. So I just say that I don't know if Adrian Peterson deserved the punishment that he got. I don't know what kind of parent he is. I do know, though, that I hate it when people act like spanking is the worst thing in the world you can do to the child. Oh, it traumatizes the child. It breaks the child down. Maybe it can. I mean, if you abuse the child, absolutely. But sometimes you need to put a little shock in the kid's system to wake them up when your child ends up getting shot or you find out your baby's in prison. And you don't want that. So discipline your kids. I'm not going to tell you to spank your kids because I know the laws are changing and people are tripping and all this other stuff. But I can definitely say make sure you discipline your kids with intelligence and love. And if physical discipline is part of your overall comprehensive recipe for good discipline for a child, then I don't think there's anything necessarily wrong with that. Well, I'm Dr. Boyce Watkins. I'm reporting here for Ball Sports. Take care. God bless. I'm gone. Peace.